Well, hello, my beautiful YouTube family. Thank you for joining me for this series where we're going to be looking at the sun through all the signs and houses, looking at a sign and a house each week for the next 12 weeks. But before we get into this week's sign and house, what is the sun all about? Well, it's how we choose to build our kingdom in this earthly existence. For most people, this is usually done through a career and through some kind of worldly achievements. The sun represents that in a general sense in the horoscope. There are other factors that we look at as well when we're doing like a career reading or something like that, but the sun is always a key player. The sun is also how we choose to identify ourselves. You know, maybe if we have the sun in the 6th house, we will identify ourselves as a helper, somebody who fixes things, solves problems for others. Perhaps if we have the sun in the 9th house, we might identify ourselves as a wisdom giver, someone with a lot of knowledge. Maybe if we have the sun in the 1st house, we might see ourselves as something of a hero in the world, here to make a change, here to make a difference in the world. Remember though that these are stories that are given to us by, let's say, our ego. The sun actually represents our ego. And so these can sometimes be stories that we buy into for ego identification as well. The sun ruling our identity and ruling our egoic self as well. Now, the sun is also our self-confidence. And so it's where we need to focus our energy in order to grow our self-confidence. For example, if you have the sun in the 11th house, that is saying that if you want to increase your self-confidence in the world, establish greater networks, build your friendship circles, and you will grow your own personal self-confidence as well. You might even get a sense of self-confidence through being a great friend to somebody too. The sun is the natural ruler of the sign of Leo, and they're a little bit the same in their energies in a sense. You know, they're both fun energies, they're both playful, they're both creative, they're both glamorous, and it's all about being the best. Wherever Leo sits is all about where am I the king, the best. And the same with the sun. Where does the sun sit? It's all about being the best. It's all about shining brightly in the world. The sun is like a superstar energy. It's a diva kind of energy, the famous person, the king, the queen. All of us have a little bit of solar energy going on. We've all got the sun somewhere in the chart. Some people are expressing it right out there for the whole world to see, and some people are keeping their diva energy a bit to themselves, but it's still there. Everyone is a king or queen in their own way, in some realm in life. The sun is the reminder in the chart of our own superstar nature. And it also reminds us, well, at least I get reminded when I look at my sun, that other people have a right to be a superstar too, to shine their light, to shine their energy in some way in the world. And I'm not here to usurp other people's right to be a king or queen in their own way, in their own manner. I am only here to shine my light in the manner that I'm called to do so. The sun's placement also shows us, therefore, where we shine, For example, sun in the 6th house might indicate you shine best by helping other people, by fixing problems for other people, finding solutions in life for other people. The sun in the 2nd house might show that you can really shine in financial matters or in some sort of creation of self-sufficiency in some way. The sun in the 10th house obviously is a very strong place. The sun is at the highest point in the sky when the sun is in the 10th house, and usually means you're born at midday. And therefore, when the sun is in the 10th house, we can shine in career. We can shine in worldly achievements, in our reputation. So that's the sun energy, a bit in a nutshell. It is the most creative planet. Now, no planet has exclusive rights to creativity, but when it comes to creative intelligence, the sun does sort of have a leading role to play, obviously. It is the giver of vitality. If you think about as above, so below, the old Hermetic principle, if we have no sun, we have no life in the solar system. We'll be sitting on Earth, it would be completely dark, we wouldn't even be able to see the moon or the other planets or each other. There would be no light, no life, nada, nothing. So the vitality that we experience comes from the sun. Our vitality as individuals is seen through the placement of the sun and its good or bad aspects in our natal chart. Again, as above, so below, the sun is illuminating, giving light as well as vitality and growth. It's giving light and it's giving illumination, as I said. So it is actually connected to our ability to see, literally and figuratively. And often people with, just a little tidbit for you, people with the sun in the first house in their childhood will often tend to need glasses or may have some sort of eye issue until they sort of come into their own in latter life, and they may not need glasses when they're older. So to be able to see in the house of the body, sun in the first house can sometimes indicate a need for glasses or that there are eye issues. And hence I'm wearing my glasses for this series because I'm getting older and my eyes need a bit of support, so hence glasses. So the sun, just to wrap up what it's all about, is also representative of fathers and father figures generally, and their influence or no influence in our lives. The sun in the 12th house may well represent that the father figure in a person's life might have been absent or missing or not around very much or disengaged or something like that. So in a nutshell, the sun is the symbol of the present you in this incarnation, the you and your role in this particular lifetime. How you envision yourself is the sun, how you identify yourself, what you aspire to be, your outer self, the self you give to the world, and how you want others to see you. That is what the sun is all about. And I should also add, the sun rules the color gold. Hence, I've got my gold top on. So in this series, we're going to be, as I said, going through each sign and each house that corresponds to the sign and looking at the characteristics that the sun gives when it's in each of those placements, how we can shine, how we can generate our self-confidence in these areas of life. And without further ado, let's dive right in to our sun, house and sign placements. So this week we're looking at the sun in the sign of Leo and then the sun in the sign of Aries. Now what does this look like? Well, here is the sign of Leo. It comes after Cancer and before Virgo, and if your sun is there, then this is the video for you. But also if you're looking at the sun in the 5th house, we would see it 5 houses, placed 5 houses in whole sign astrology from your rising sign. In this case, in this example, you could have any rising sign and it would apply, but this example has Aries, and we count 5 from Aries, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it would be the 5th house there. So if you had, let's say, if Taurus was your rising sign, you could count 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the sun in Virgo would be your 5th house if you had Taurus rising. So you see how that works. You count 5 houses or 5 signs from the rising sign, and that then gives you what you need for a 5th house sun placement, and this video will be pertinent to you also. So let's start with the sign of Leo. When we have the sun in the sign of Leo, it means that our identity will come from Leo, or Leonian if you want to call them that, things. Being glamorous might be one way that expresses. It's a very strong position for the sun to be in Leo because it's its own territory, it's its own sign, and it's a very strong position for a leadership role. If you have the sun in Leo in any house, it will usually designate that you are cut out to be a leader in some way, shape or form. The sun in the sign of Leo is the sign of the king of the jungle, lion, and of course the sun is the center of the solar system. So it's this very kingly energy sitting in Leo. It makes you a very kingly person, and therefore your identity might be, I am kingly, I am queenly, I am a princess kind of thing. You might have that aura, that energy about you, that identity that you align with. There's a glow that Leo sun people have. They're very independent. It's very, very autonomous. The sun is an autonomous planet and Leo is an autonomous sign. So naturally, very autonomous people, and they will identify with being very autonomous as well. But they're charismatic. There's almost a larger than life quality to them about this. They're very regal in attitude and potentially very regal or kingly, queenly in their appearance in some way also. Remember that the sun is the center of the solar system, and in this powerful sign of Leo, there is a need to sort of be the center of something, the center of your own kingdom, the center of your family, the center of your career, the center of your community, whatever it is, there is a need to be the center, at the center of something. Remember that the sun rules father figures as well, and the father figure might have been very Leo-like, very warm, very generous, maybe very creative. Leo's a very creative sign, so very creative person, very intelligent, quite benevolent as well in a kingly sort of a way too. Leo and the fifth house both have connections to tremendous creative intelligence, true intelligence, like just innate intelligence. And with the sun here, it's going to be something that your father possessed, and most likely something you will possess as well. It's also an indicator for being independently minded. Remember, it's autonomous, independent, and you will be independently minded. Generally speaking, unless the sun is, well, for example, in my chart, my sun is in my 6th house, which tends a bit towards more humility than we might otherwise see with the sun in Leo in, say, the 10th house or something like that. But generally speaking, we see a lot of leadership qualities with this placement, even in the 6th house, but very much a need to set the rules. Think about the king in his kingdom, the sun in his own kingdom, Leo, having to set the rules for relationships, for work, for life, for everything. They designate, they delegate, they say, okay, you minister do this, and you other dude do that. And there is this need to sort of set the tone, set the rules, and run the show, so to speak. The good thing with that though is Sun in Leo people will tend to be very generous, very benevolent, very warm, very loving, very giving, very affectionate kinds of people, because it is a beautiful energy. I mean, the sun gives life and warmth that makes things grow, and here it's in its own territory. It's in its strong rulership, giving warmth, abundantly giving warmth and light to make life grow. So there's this beautiful benevolence that comes from people with the sun in Leo. Shadow side might see a person with this placement being a bit paternalistic, perhaps, in expression, but generally very generous and benevolent and dignified types of leaders are made with the sun in Leo. An interesting thing, sun in Leo people don't seem to fear so much public opinion the way some other sun placements do, because there's just an inner knowing. I am a king. Maybe they've been a king in a past life, or at least a tribal leader, or chief of some indigenous group or something. And so there is this leadership quality that's innately coming through. So they just have this inner knowing that, I'm a leader. I don't care what anyone thinks. I'm just doing it my way. They can stuff them, It's not rebellious. It's not like stick it to the man stuff. It's much more like just an inner knowing, I don't need to conform to what other people say. I am an individual. That's very much an identification of sun in Leo people. There's a feeling of entitlement because of this as well, and like a need to be in charge. So often people with sun in Leo, and I'll vouch for this one, can't work for other people. They have to work for themselves. At least they might begin by working for other people, but their aspiration's always going to be, when can I get out and do it my way and run things according to my terms? And usually they'll be very good at it when they do. What if you have the sun in the 5th house? What does that mean for you? And that can be in any sign at all. But if it's in the 5th house of the horoscope, well, it means that you will be a naturally bright and intelligent type of person. The sun is in his own territory when it comes to house placements here. And so the sun is very at home and aligns very well with the nature of the 5th house. You'll probably find that you don't need to study too much to get good grades in high school. It will just come innately to you to do so. There's this natural intelligence for people with the sun in the 5th house. Drama comes easy to you, acting and being on stage, performing. These will just be, even if you're a shy person, you know, when you get on stage, it'll just come easily. It's not like you're going to struggle, unless there are other planets like Saturn in the 5th house as well that might inhibit things. It's not like you're going to struggle to be able to perform if you should want to. Generally, we see people with the 5th house sun wanting to have center stage roles, wanting to be on stage, wanting to be performers more often than not. If you're involved in fashion and sort of celebrity circles, as you may very well want to be, sun might identify with being in those sorts of fields, you're going to be like the life of the party, the center of the action, because remember, the sun is the center of things. You will be the center of the fashion party or the celebrity, whatever's going down when you have the sun in the 5th house. Now, if the sun happens to be in a fire sign, this is the house of children, and it can actually give some problems to getting pregnant. It might not happen very easily. My own life is an illustration of this. I have in the Campanus system, the house division system, my son is in the 5th house, and I had a great deal of trouble getting pregnant. And I know my sister got pregnant. We're both trying to have kids around the same time, and she got pregnant like that. It took me a year or two, and she felt really bad. Poor thing. It didn't worry me. I was happy for her. But yeah, it can delay things a little bit, because what is going on is that if the sun is in a fire sign in the 5th house, as mine is in the illustration, it is going to give too much hot energy, too much fire energy that burns, that dries. And of course, in the idea of pregnancy, things need to be moist for things to grow. You know, this is a general esoteric understanding. So how do we decrease the fire energy so that the moist energy can be more present? Well, you might like to eat less spicy foods, eat more moist foods, lots more sort of oats soaked in oat milk or something like that, sloppy foods, if you want to call it that, and not overly spicy. You might like to decrease the amount of exercise so you're not so physically hot yourself, that might be another approach. Living in a cool climate might help you in some way, where, go to the snow, hang out in the snow if you're trying to get pregnant. Or maybe you could even wear cooler clothing, if you can't go live in a cold climate. Wear, light, breezy, non-restrictive clothing to help keep the body at a cool temperature, and that can also help. There are other remedies too, but just know that the sun in a fire sign in the 5th house can make it more difficult, so you might need to work harder for that to occur. Because the 5th house is our children, and with the sun, the planet of uniqueness here in the 5th house, your children can stand out in some way, be unique, be different. It's too early for me to give you an analogy of that in my own children's lives, but it has certainly been noted in astrological circles that the children of people with sun in the 5th house often go on to have some sort of very independent lives, unique lives, lives where they may even become famous. So exciting times if you've got children and you have the sun in the 5th house. You can even attract a lot of attention to your life because of your children in some way. Your children might be important people in some manner, and that brings you a lot of attention into your life. Now, this is also a placement for people who are very charming and endearing. Just, those people who just know how to get on everybody's good side. It's quite lovely. Romance is also a big one here too, because this is the house of romance. And let's face it, the sun rules Leo, and it has correlation to the 5th house. It does have that warm, affectionate, creative energy, and you need all those three things if you're going to be a romantic type of person. You need to be warm, you need to be affectionate, you need to come up with creative ideas to keep the romance bubbling away, don't you? In fact, because the sun is the center of things, people with the sun in the 5th house will have romance as the center of their lives. They will almost gear the rest of their kingdom, their worldly experiences, around the idea of let's have romance. And that might not necessarily mean that, oh, they've always got to have a boyfriend or they've always got to have a girlfriend, but it might mean that they make their lives romantic, you know. Instead of just cooking dinner for the, you know, you're a single mum like me, you cook dinner for the kids, instead of just whacking it on the plate and here you go, kids, and it's herd mentality and everybody in, you know, they've got candles on the table and a flower arrangement and little things that create more beauty and romance and glamour in everyday life. You'll tend to make that your whole kingdom. Romance and beauty is a big part of your life. One thing that's perhaps not so flash is people with the sun in the 5th house can idolize their romantic partners. The thing is that when the idealization ends, you know, when reality sets in and people, you know, experience the rubber hitting the road, so to speak, it can mean that you start looking for romance elsewhere. So it's, if you've got this placement, and of course we all want our relationships to go the distance and be long term, then you're going to need to actually work on maintaining romance, maintaining the delight and the joy in love with your partner. And you might need to word your partner up as well that, hey, we're going to have to work on this, or else, you know, the relationship might not have really like a strong future. So let's make a deal. We're going to do relationships with lots of romance. If you've got this, it's a good deal to strike with your partner. The shadow side of this placement is it can, unless there are other mitigating factors in your chart, such as, you know, a strong emphasis on the 6th house of humility, or maybe a lot of water energy in your chart. Without those sorts of mitigating factors, sometimes the shadow side can express in egocentric personalities, because this is, the sun rules the ego and it's in the house of the ego. So it's like overly emphasized egoic natures in the shadow side. It can also draw in, because of that, a lot of attention from other people. This is, I mean, unless you've got like a Saturn in the 5th house, which kind of blocks that effect. But generally speaking, you might find that there is a lot of attention in your life. It's the house of celebrity after all, and here is the sun wanting to be the center of everything. So you might attract attention and emphasis in your life that sort of places you in a celebrity type role if you've got this position. And when I say celebrity, I'm not talking that you're going to be on the cover of every Hollywood magazine or something like that. I'm talking more like in your sphere, in your world, in your realm, you know, in your kingdom. Maybe that's a kingdom you live in, I don't know, outback Australia, in a town of 20,000 people or something, and that's your kingdom. You might be very well known there. You might be a celebrity there in that little sphere. Now, the sun also shows our father and the roles of our father. Remember, the sun is the father. And in the 5th house, it generally tends to indicate that your father might be, you know, more dramatic, have center stage roles, be in politics, be in creative industries in some way, or be in speculative occupations, or at least dabble in speculative endeavors, because this is the house of, you know, having a gamble, you know. I've got to say, this is, I mean, I have, as I said, the sun in the 5th house in the Campanus and Placidus systems of division, but my father is nothing like that. He's more like the sun in my whole sign placement, which is the 6th house. So if you're weighing up, is this me, is this not me, make sure you look at it through a few different lenses because there can be variance based on which system of analysis that you're using. This is one of the reasons that I find whole sign astrology to be the most accurate. Sometimes we cross over into our Placidus or Campanus or whatever we use kind of system as well, but mostly whole sign is bang on the money. And that's what I've described mostly here for you today, the effects of a whole sign house placement in the 5th house for the sun. So thanks for joining me for this video. Next week I'll have another video for you. Stay tuned to find out more about the sun and its placement in houses and signs.